Just a little intro for those that don't know. Bronson Arroyo, former major league pitcher. You played. You did some time in Cincinnati. You played for the Pirates. Nobody cares about them. The only team anybody should care about is the Boston Red Sox, in my opinion. And you brought a World Series championship to the city in 2004. You're part of that amazing team. But now that you're not playing, you can focus more on your other love, and that is music. You have the new album out now. You can stream it everywhere, some might say. But your last album was 2005, right? That was covering the bases. That was an album of mostly covers. 18 years in between albums. So what are you guys, Guns N' Roses? Or are you like in Tool now? I mean, you're going to release an album just every decade? Is that the plan at this point?
No, I think you know back when I put out the Covering the Bases record in '05, it was an opportunity that somebody had brought to me. It wasn't me saying, "Hey, I want to put a record out." Somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I heard you play in the locker room a lot. I had read an article about you being a jukebox with your acoustic guitar in the locker room, something that Kevin Millar would have said." And they asked me if I wanted to make a record. And back then I said, I just don't have time to write original songs. And I wasn't a seasoned enough musician to even pull that off at the time. So they said, hey, we're going to bring in this all-star band. Why don't you just pick 12 of your favorite tracks that you loved listening to, as an adolescent? And so that's where Covering the Bases came from. This is my real first, journey into writing music, playing music, and kind of being an artist on my own. Back then it was just something that I was doing for fun, but now it's a little bit, it's not a hobby anymore. It's a bit of a passion, and writing these songs in 2018, it's just a different ballgame when you're telling your own story. And 18 years in between, I don't expect it being that long for the next one coming.
All right. And then some might say, I've read that, you're really emphasizing this is a band effort. You do have a killer band behind you. I mean, some of these guys have played with some amazing people like Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and Garbage. I mean, Miley Cyrus is in the mix there with some of the guys in your band. How did you put that together? Yeah,
these are guys that I met in New England. 2003, I'm getting a minor league pitcher of the year award from Bud Selig, and I happened to run into Peter Gammons and Theo Epstein, and they said, hey, we've got an event tonight that we raise money for charity called Hot Stove Cool Music at the Paradise Rock Club. Why don't you come? So the next spring in 2004, they introduced me to Jamie Aronson and Eric Gardner, the drummer. They were touring with American Hi-Fi at the time, opening up for Fuel in Fort Myers. And so we just became fast friends. They introduced me to Clint Walsh, the other guitar player, not long after that. And Ed Velasquez was also part of Hot Stove Cool Music all those years. And so we just became fast friends. And we've been hanging for 20 years playing shows together, playing a lot of cover songs of Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Stone Temple Pilots. And so we always kind of had in the back of our mind that we would write a record, but these guys are obviously busy touring with other bands all the time. We didn't know if we'd actually be able to pull it off, but I kind of got the itch after retirement, and I got about 24 songs together that I had taken riffs from them and brought back to Cincinnati and finished with some friends. And this is kind of my first stab at writing original tunes.
Yeah, these are 10 original songs, on some might say, and it's a very dynamic record. I mean, there's a lot of really like tight little rock songs, but you got some dream pop kind of stuff in there, and an acoustic ballad, or as I like to call it, a couple skate song. But I want to mention that later. What I want to ask is, when did you feel ready to present an original song? Because I know writing songs, a lot of times it's not easy, and presenting it to other people, whether you're playing it for them or giving them a demo, is a little nerve-wracking too. Did your experience as a starting pitcher in the major leagues kind of help you handle that pressure or that nervousness about that, or was there no nervousness at all?
I was a little unsure that I could finish a song from front to back, tell a story that I didn't feel like was cliche, right? You start second-guessing yourself a little bit when it comes to writing lyrics, and that was the hardest part about finishing songs. But I always, playing baseball all those years, I realized that people at the top of the game, whether it's in sports or an actor, an actress, or a musician, a lot of these guys always lived with a lot more insecurities than me. I was always a guy who could just go out on the mound. I'm going to flip a bunch of 68-mile-an-hour curveballs up here, and I'm going to get outs, and I don't care what you think. And it was easy for me to not second-guess myself as much as others. And so when I started with the writing process, once I got demos that I thought sounded good to me, I felt very confident about sharing those with people. I mean, I took these very rough demos. There were times when I would walk into, a friend's house here. Elliot Sloan from Blessed Union of Souls helped me write some of these songs, and I'd go to his house, bring a riff, and he'd say, what do you want to write this about today? And I would just describe what I want the song to be about, or a historical event I wanted to write about. And in 4 hours, we would sing it, play a demo and sing it down once or twice, and okay, that's good enough, and I'm going to take it home tonight. And I took those kind of really rough demos to Eddie Vedder in Seattle, and I let him listen to them, and I said, tell me what you think of these songs, critique them, give me some advice before I go to record this thing. And a lot of people probably thought, for Eddie being my childhood hero musically, you'd think that there would be a little bit of apprehension to that, but for me, honestly, it's just like, everybody in the world is trying to find their way. And everybody, if you look at Ed Sheeran playing when he's 16 years old, it doesn't sound anything like he sounds now, right? And there's this evolution of becoming better and going down to the basement and just working on your craft. And I just felt like it was part of the process, and definitely wasn't ashamed to share those early songs.
That's amazing that you could just take it to Eddie Vedder. I mean, that's how long have you known Eddie, and has he always helped you with music?
We met in 2010 for the first time. Those guys would always tour in the summertime, and rarely would they ever be touring in the winter. So we play everyday baseball. You get the 162 games plus spring training. You have about 20 days off in an entire 8-month stretch. And so I rarely ever got to see a good rock show back in those days. But they finally started touring a little bit later in the year, and we became friends since 2010. And, we would see each other's shows, and I would pop up on the stage and play a song with him, and he would get little videos from, the Hot Stove Cool music, and I would be playing a couple of Pearl Jam songs, and he'd text me and say, hey, man, I saw some things, I heard some things, it sounds nice, and,
wow.
He would just give me little confidence boosters, and then over the years, you just become friends, and he's not a guy that I can just pick up the phone and call him and he's going to pick it up every time. He's a busy guy, but there are pockets of time, where you get to spend these, couple of hours with him, where you really get to kind of, and he realized that I'm authentic and that I'm real and that I'm playing the music because it matters to me, because I need it in my life the way he needs it. And he respects that, I think. And so it's fun to kind of have that admiration back and forth, between us.
Now, I want to talk about some of the songs on Some Might Say. So a couple of my favorites are Side Effects, Own Your Name, Hard Way. These sounds like there's a little vitriol in there to me. There's some anger going on in there. Is this anything in particular?
Most of the songs, I don't have a lot of anger in me as a person. I never have. I grew up in this weight room with my father, and he was just an ultimate optimist. And he just made me realize if you wanted to survive in life in general, but also as an athlete at the top level, you were going to have to be able to brush off giving up 3 runs in the first inning and be able to go back out and keep your team in the game. And all of that was about being optimistic. And a lot of the anxiety and the irritation and all that angst you hear in those Stone Temple Pilots and Nirvana songs, I loved listening to those, but had a hard time writing it. So what I did on this record was I was writing outside of myself mostly. So Own Your Name is about, thinking about what it'd be like to be in the Vietnam War. And, Side Effects came from, Anthony Bourdain and, Robin Williams and Chester Bennington, Kate Spade and Chris Cornell all hanging themselves, right? So that song is about me just saying, everybody's having this anxiety and this depression, and we're taking these pills, and are the pills really maybe the cause of these problems, or is it something else? So I was writing about externally, but what you find in the record that's kind of a line that is Bronson Arroyo that kind of threads the whole thing together is being present tense. And you'll hear that on Higher Ground a lot. You'll hear it in Nights Alive. It's about enjoying these moments in life as they pass, because we all will disappear quickly. And that's really who I am as a person, and that's weaved all the way through the record. But there's some other songs in there, like, Guerrilla Warfare. I'm writing about, Castro taking over the country, and the chorus is there in 1959 with Che. And, I don't have that type of, like viciousness in me, but I'm trying to write from a standpoint of somebody else.
I want to ask you about Never Let You Go, which is a really beautiful love song, but not like a conventional boy meets girl love song. I mean, you start out talking about your love of music, and talk to me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, so that was a little ditty. I kept calling it the little John Denver riff, that acoustic guitar part off the top. Jamie Aronson, my guitar player there, he had that in his old iPhone, and he said, I've always had this little pretty thing here I never could finish. So he gave that to me, and I brought it back to Cincinnati, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, because it was so different than the rest of the record, being kind of hard-driven rock songs. And, once I started writing in a real cliche way on purpose on that song, talking about John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and then in the second verse there I'm talking about Bob Dylan, and then you can hear Elvis in the last verse. But in that chorus, when I caught that chorus, I just really wanted to say, All You Need Is Love is by the Beatles has always resonated heavy with me. And there's a Pearl Jam song called Love Boat Captain.
Yes.
And in that chorus there, he says, love is all you need. And I know it's been said before. And so in that chorus, not only was I saying to people like, hey, in this life, love is really the only tangible thing that you're going to leave with, and you better enjoy it while you can with the people that you can do that with. But also I was giving an homage to Vedder and to the Beatles, just for saying the line, like all you need is love. And that I've always enjoyed really quiet music, and if you might not love the hard rock stuff on the record, but that one there is so pretty, it gives me goosebumps every time we play it.
It is. It's a really beautiful song, and I think it's beautiful. I think the lyrics are great because you can tell, the love is real there.
Right.
I think that's good that you made it acoustic so people can hear that genuine love in there. So I think that's one of my favorites on there too.
Yeah, thanks, man. You want people to feel what I really was set out to do when I wanted to record the record. Once the songs were finished, the guys were kind of like, what are you thinking about when we come into the studio? And the two things that I really wanted was, one was I wanted backup harmonies. I wanted these 3-part harmonies sung by the guys in the band to be able to perform them live, not with a click track or with any backing tracks. And that's been really cool. And the other thing was really just to feel like the music was authentic. So my whole thing was, I don't know anything about recording and I don't know anything about sonics, but what I said was I feel like when I listen to a Tom Petty record, like I'm in the room with the 5 guys. It's not so slick that it doesn't feel perfect.
Right.
And so I wanted to record it in a way that felt loose enough that you could feel like you were in the room, but that it also just felt like authentic stories,
I got to ask you before we go some baseball questions, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Specifically about how you feel, or if you have any opinions on the new rules that they're practicing here in spring training.
They change the rules. It seems like every 3 or 4 years we're getting a bunch of new stuff coming down the pipe, which the game has always evolved a little bit, but it seems to have changed a lot over the years. But I think the pitch clock wouldn't have affected me a lot, but I think it's going to affect some guys a little bit because there's a certain cadence you pitch to, and maybe a guy like Max Scherzer or a guy like Clayton Kershaw, they might have a little bit of a tough time with it, just thinking about trying to speed the game up a little bit. But I think I'm going to enjoy the shift not being there. I think there's something to be said for not having 5 guys on one side of second base. I think there's I really like playing straight up in the infield. I always have. I mean, I know that the numbers say if you got a lefty that's pulling the ball in the hole constantly, you got to get an extra guy over there, which obviously makes sense. But I've enjoyed it just being straight up. So. Some of the rules I really love and some of them I hate. I can't stand the fact that you can only throw the ball to first base a couple of times. I mean, It's going to be very interesting to see what happens after that. Does the guy get a 20-foot lead and just walk into second base? I haven't seen these things play out in real time yet.
Well, the no shift thing, if I may counter, I mean, isn't it a job of an athlete really at any level to kind of figure that out? And I know you've trained, and when you get to the major league level, you've trained to really emphasize your best qualities, and then you get there and they do something like the shift, and I know changing that isn't easy, but shouldn't that be something that they should figure out? I mean, when you were pitching, you were figuring out hitters. You weren't just up there throwing to them. You were doing research on them. You were watching film, I would assume.
Yeah, you're speaking though from the batter standpoint, right? Like, okay, if you're quality at what you do, you should be able to hit the ball the opposite way to shortstop if they leave it vacant, and I totally agree. I'm talking about it from a pitcher standpoint, which is when I'm on the mound and I got a man on first, and I know we're supposed to be shifting because this lefty pulls the ball in the hole all the time, but then he hits the ball right where the shortstop is supposed to be playing, and in that split second that the ball is passing the mound, I say in my mind, I'm out of the inning. I just got a double play, and then I look and there's no infielder there. Then it's like it kind of like takes the wind out of your sails a little bit, even though statistically you're saying, yeah, we know we have to play the shift, but it would be such a letdown that a lot of times I would just rather say, just play straight up. That way when I'm supposed to get those double plays, I can get it and I don't feel so kind of like, like you just took all the oomph out of me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I appreciate that perspective. Finally, on the baseball thing, the bigger bases. Did we really need bigger bases?
No, I don't think so. Look, there's a handful of incidents you can say. Jason Kendall from the Pittsburgh Pirates was my catcher way back in the day, and he just totally snapped his ankle in Three River Stadium one day, and it was so ridiculously gruesome. You look at something like that and you say, yeah, it'd be great to have a bigger base there, but how many of those have we had over the last 150 years? Not too many. I don't think we actually need a bigger base, especially now you can't take the guys out at second base. You can't crush the catcher at home plate.
Yeah.
They've already kind of done that. I wasn't so sure they needed that, but we're going to watch baseball this year as a fan, just like everybody else, and we get to see. Sometimes you get surprised by something that you enjoy a little bit more than you think, and sometimes it's vice versa. So it's going to be an interesting season and very fun to watch Major League Baseball this year.
Well, Bronson Arroyo, I appreciate your insights on that and your new album. Some might say you can listen to it now everywhere. When are you bringing the band to the Worcester area here in Massachusetts?
Dr. Charles Steinberg talking about possibly doing something in the Woodstock Stadium at some point, but around April 14th or 15th, we are playing the Hot Stove Cool music for Peter Gammons and Theo Epstein's charity, the foundation to be named later. We'll be playing at City Winery, and I believe it's on the 15th of April. If people want to check that out, it's one of the few times we'll be in New England, at least in the next few months.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time this morning. Keep it going, and we're looking forward to seeing it live. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike.